This is a presentation by Amy Nyhold for the Franciscan University of Steubenville's Schools and Society course taught by Dr. Charles Kokoko, December 14th, 2012. This is Field-Based Activity 4, presenting information on Proposition 7, which says that the percentage of American children living in families with incomes below the poverty line has increased continuously. Nearly 1 in 5 children are poor today. Understanding that proposition, I have chosen to complete Proficiency 3, which asks to examine Maslow's hierarchy of needs and explain how his concepts impact a student's ability to learn, as well as the support needed for teachers to pay particular attention to these factors. Maslow's hierarchy of needs starts off on the base level with the physiological needs. This interprets students' physiological needs such as health issues, such as breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, and sleep. Within these physiological needs, educators can tell that if there is an issue based on the student's physiological makeup in many cases. Secondly, we see that safety and security in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a very, very important issue when it comes to the student's education, dealing with their health, their future employment, property, family, and social stability. Next, we have a discussion of love and belonging. This deals with the intimate relationships of friendship, family, intimacy, and most importantly, the sense of connection between all of those units. Next, we have an integration of self-esteem, dealing with issues of confidence, achievement, respect of others, and the need to be a unique individual. Finally, at the very top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is self-actualization. We see here that in issues of self-actualization, the students have an understanding of their morality, their creativity, spontaneity, acceptance, experience, purpose, and the meaning of the overall inner potential. Focusing on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I have taken a look at a standard for proficiency to look into the impact that these needs have in an educational setting. Understanding the basic needs of students, Deborah Lindsay Prince and Esther M. Howard wrote an article called Children and Their Basic Needs, which focuses on elementary school as well as secondary education students and the basic needs that they need to inherit to be successful in the educational process. What Prince and Howard were able to do in their article was juxtapose needs to educational goals. You see here that the needs of self-actualization, self-esteem, love and belonging, safety and security, and those physiological needs are made up in opposition and juxtaposition to education, as Prince and Howard say that many of the nation's children are not coming to school physically, socially, emotionally, or cognitively ready to learn. You can see the direct correlation between physiological needs, social needs, love and belonging, cognitive, and that self-actualization there within the quote. Prince and Howard continue on to say that approximately 13 million children reared in poverty come to school with poor health and nutrition, low self-esteem, attention problems, violent experiences, and low expectations. You can see here from Prince and Howard's research juxtaposed to the needs of children that children are not getting the needs met in education when they are in poverty. A second assertion that Prince and Howard make is that the basic needs of children when they are in support also support education. They say in their article that inequities based on socioeconomic status can still be found when it comes to the care and well-being of children, and the well-being of society could only be found in the proper care and education of children. We see here that care and education are linked. Continuing on in the for Prince and Howard, we see that poverty and retention are uniquely linked. In order to sense this atmosphere of love and belonging, students need to feel as if they are part of a community, just as we see this natural community reflected on the slide. Prince and Howard assert that not only do children who are poor have higher dropout rates, higher rates of retention at grade level, and higher special education rates than children who are not poor, they are also more likely to have serious physical and mental disabilities and ill health. Outside of this love and belonging are students who are in poverty, who have serious health issues, and poor retention, who are being forgotten. Continuing on, Prince and Howard say that we must have an understanding of who the students are in order to progress in making methodologies, new programs, and support systems for these students who are in poverty. They assert that before we can even begin to address the educational needs of these children, we must begin to understand the multi-dimensional obstacles presented by poverty in the fulfillment of basic needs. When we think of things that are multidimensional, we often think of the different colors of a Rubik's Cube. But the multidimensional nature of students can be just as hard and confusing to deal with as one of these games or one of these blocks. We need to look past the difficulty and start understanding so that we may, in fact, enact progress. This progress can also be found in self-actualization. Students who are in poverty cannot see the progress for the future in education and cannot see that opportunity awaits them if they are engaged in education. Education is not a viable goal for students in poverty. Education is not a future opportunity for students in poverty. Education is simply a prelude to the working. Prince and Howard say that today children living in poor neighborhoods are faced with so many conflicting messages. Because of technological advances, more and more of the jobs people hold are due to their education, and children in poverty seldom see the attractiveness of these jobs. Therefore, in a neighborhood where jobs people hold owe little to their education, it is natural for children as they grow older to regard school as just that brief prelude to work, rather than a venue for future opportunities. Continuing on in the discussion of the impact of poverty on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we see this need being met by the creation and implementation of nurture groups in education through the references of Jennifer Garner and Miles Thomas. You might be asking yourself, what are nurture groups? Nurture groups are collaborative groups set up for short-term intervention within a school. These groups are implemented to locate the needs of students and fulfill them, to promote safety and health within children in a school district, and to engage and bridge the gap between the socioeconomic deficiencies of students in poverty. The purpose of nurture groups, according to Garner and Thomas, say that are the development of personal collaborative skills. Garner and Thomas assert that secondary schools tend to have more individualistic, subject-defined focus involving more impersonal interactions with the teacher, and nurture groups strive to develop those personal collaborative skills by breaking down the individualistic societies promoted by the school districts. Integrating Maslow's hierarchy of needs into motivation by seeing and comparing Maslow's needs to nurture groups' provisions, we see the constant needs of hunger, security, health, and belonging. And nurture groups provide answers to all of those needs through students in poverty and education. Nurture groups, for instance, start the group day with breakfast at school. Students are encouraged to come in early, share breakfast and conversation with their nurture group, and start the day off with a meal. Secondly, nurture group provides a safe haven in collaborative group settings. This safe haven adds to Maslow's needs of security as well as that sense of belonging, as students are put into an intentional, collaborative group that is there for their support. As Garner and Miles assert, nurture groups provide a nurturing process that helps the children meet their basic needs in ways that are compatible with the needs of others. Beginning to understand the implications brought about by the research provided for the implementation of educational systems such as nurture groups and collaborative groups to focus on poverty and its implementation into education, I had a discussion with Mr. Robert Pushkas about some learning and insights he has revealed about the effects of poverty on education and how it affects basic human and student needs. One of the first points that Mr. Pushkas made is that we have an inequality of access in our educational system. In many cases, this lack of access to materials needed for supportive education, like new curriculums, books, technologies, learning methodologies, and even professional development for teachers, is unequal, and we're suffering of an inequality of that in many of our school districts. This causes not only the students to be disengaged from the purpose of education, but also for the teachers to be disengaged for the purpose of education with this inequality of access. A second thought that Mr. Pushkas brought up in terms of poverty and need is the lack of mentors and the lack of aspirations that students have in terms of the purpose of education and advancement through education. For instance, we have delays in advancement with students who don't see the need for progress. There is no one to encourage them for forward looking and for the future. They don't have a future, according to many students who are in poverty. And therefore, this direct connection between poverty and need is the connection between mentoring. Mentoring, therefore, does matter. In a last point by Mr. Pushkas, he also said that there really is, with students in poverty, a disregard for the purpose of education. As we said before, mentoring is integral, but students who lack vision and who lack purpose for education do not have that imagined idea or goals toward which they aspire. Without those goals and without those visions, students will not succeed. Mr. Pushkas gave an example of graduating from high school and heading into an education which cost him a lot of money, but gave an example of how some of his friends disregarded the purpose of education and therefore started into the workforce. Now they're making, a high socioeconomic salary and are living lives that they decided they wanted to live based on their ideals in education. If it's not modeled to them in a way that is necessary to understand that education is beneficial, then that model is not going to occur in their realistic lives. Looking at the effect that poverty has on the basic needs of students in today's educational system, I've come up with multiple teaching goals to correct and to encourage and to engage this idea further in my education. My first teaching goal would be to focus on nurturing and supporting the students that I have. Understanding the nature of nurture groups, I want to create small nurture groups within my classroom structure. Though I do have a boundary by working at a cyber charter school, I still have the ability to segregate my students in a way that will allow them to nurture each other, not only with the support of others that will attempt to address this issue of love and belonging, and not only for a support of self, which will include a support of the self-esteem noted in Maslow, but it will also require a support for learning. This support for learning is very important as it leads to self-actualization for the nurture and support of students. Secondly, I will look at student backgrounds. My second teacher goal, therefore, will be to research and form relationships with students to understand who they are, where they have come from, what their family life is like, and how I can further engage them in their education. Empathy without knowledge is empty. I can be empathetic about something, but if I don't understand where the student has come from, then my empathy is empty. I really do need to understand the PA Cyber goal to know every student by name. My third teacher goal is to be a student-centered curriculum and to help create student-centered curriculums. In order to do this, I will adapt curriculum to include various student backgrounds and lifestyles. By doing this, I will ensure equality in my education and in the education of my students. I will provide intentional discussion to open it up to understand other students' cultures and other students' backgrounds, including where they are socioeconomically. And by doing these things, I hope to promote a community in the classroom that encourages all different types of students. Thank you for watching my presentation for the Franciscan University of Steubenville's Schools and Society course. I have used all references and compliance with APA standards and common